So G20 summit opens in Cannes next month, early next month, the same day as you arrive in France, by the way. Uh, and the issues that the world is looking at currently is unemployment, is good governance, is financial, sector's responsibility. Do you think IT has answers to some of these questions, and whether India or NASSCOM can show the way, at least to the extent possible?
Well, I think it's a good coincidence that both G20 is happening at the same time when India and France are looking at how we can collaborate on the ICT and how can we each contribute to the well-being of our countries. I think one good news is that the G20 meets in France, and I think we must thank France and Germany for playing a very positive role in terms of helping avoid a crisis, because I don't think the world can take another crisis at this point of time. We are barely recovering from what happened in 2008. And the fact that it is the G20 now and not the G8 and the G2 is also evidence of the fact that more countries are now part of this globalization. To the specific question that you raised on the role of IT, I think there are several aspects of this. Very clearly, markets are changing. The growth, unless the growth comes into economies, jobs are not going to get created. Also, I think we have to be careful that jobs might have gone in areas which are not going to recover fast. So there is need for us to reskill these people into those areas where we see growth. And if you look at many areas, I think it is possible to reskill people. And if there is one area that I think we as India have certain capabilities, we hope we can leverage them, is how to skill our people, right? And so 2 points, really it's economic activity that's going to do. We want the companies, the French companies to do well and US companies to do well. And it's only when they do well would they start hiring people. And I think for that we can contribute by making them more competitive, help them reduce time to market, produce products which are relevant for global markets. On the governance side, very, very clearly, I think the transparency and early warning signals, what happened in 2008 should never have happened and should not ever happen again. And what's going to make that happen? I think there are trails that people leave, and the IT solutions that are there for transparency and governance have to be built in. It's not only enough to regulate. I think it is to look for early warning signals, smoke signals, which are always available, and corrective action then takes place in these areas. So there are many, many ways that are there. I think the third element, which I think is as important that you mentioned, and I think this whole issue about what happened in India and what's happening today in Wall Street and around the world, is I think the tolerance of a common man to the happenings today and the helplessness of the governments, that tolerance is going down, right? And I hope and I think it's going to put the countries into action for more responsible politics. And I think that more responsible politics would lead to quick decision making. So the solutions, while they are in IT, I think it's also simultaneously that we are seeing today the common man demanding it. So I don't think there is an option. The more and early that countries adopt technology to be the game changer, to ensure that people are getting the right health care. So let's take the case that governments have to cut their budgets, but the common citizen doesn't want the budget to be cut at the cost of healthcare going down. So how can you cut your budget and still give healthcare service? It can only be done by technology, right? And it's not about what India can do or IT can do. I think collaboratively we all need to work. There are solutions that are emerging where technology will provide those benefits, those services to consumer, which will help customers and citizens get better service, at the same time help governments reduce cost. I think, it's both an opportunity, but more importantly, it's, I think, very important for us that we handle this today. Otherwise, I think we are in for even more social unrest.
Okay. India has by and large escaped the extremes that are being seen in the West. To what extent do you think it is? I mean, first of all, what do you attribute that to, and to what extent is technology or IT a factor in that?
No, I would say that we are integrated into the global economy and we are not insulated. However, India is going through a phase of growth here, which is entirely driven by internal consumption, right? So I think that internal consumption saves us, because we dropped down from 9 to 6.5, but 6.5 was still a good growth that we had. I think our banks escaped the situation that happened in the US,
Yeah.
and I think that happened because our regulation here in India was tighter than it is there, and I think it's good for the government to be having an oversight, and I think we must say that Indian governance structure, whether of combination of RBI, SEBI, fiscal and monetary regulations that we have, came in handy. I think our growth rate is also, why is the growth happening in India? Why is the consumption increasing? Because I think we did certain liberalization, certain policy changes that took place, which, at the end of it speared the whole country elevating. Because if you didn't have a 9% growth, then you have no funds to do that. So I think it's a self-feeding thing. So even in countries overseas where you're having 1.5%, 2% growth or less, you have a problem because you have to see growth. Where is the growth going to come from? It's going to come from countries like India, right? Today, there are large populations, and that's where population shift. We are not a mature market. We are not a saturated market. People are not buying products because they want to change the brand, or it's the first-time buyers, right? Hence, it's quite a virgin market, and we do hope that countries like France participate fully in it. And interestingly, Indian market is amazingly stratified, right? There is a very high-end product to sell, and there is a new product in volumes to be sent.
True.
So there is need for companies to come and find an innovative way to approach this market. And gone are those days where you tweaked existing product, took the bells and whistles out, and sold it cheaper.
Yeah.
What you need is a product which meets the market needs.
Yeah.
And it's never too late. I would think at this point of time, the French companies have gained some areas in the marketplace, but there is much more. And somewhere you do feel that there is a feeling of being contented with the present. And I think that's the one. So sure, is the Indian market easy? No. No new market is going to be easy.
True.
Right? Your own existing markets are not easy. So would you rather look at what are you going to do to create newer areas in existing mature markets, or are you got more scope to do this and I think that's what really India has to offer. I would say a few things have changed. If I look at some of the IT companies, and if I look at companies such as Capgemini, if I look at Styria, Sopra, right, I think these companies have done quite well to have changed their paradigm. And what are they doing with it? It's not about cost. It's about their becoming competitive, and they're picking up business which was only enabled because you embraced global delivery as a model. And it's quite amazing to see how these three companies are doing it. And the question is, I'm sure there are others, larger corporations, not only in tech sector but otherwise. But here is a place where France is respected for a brand. French designs are not only for luxury, but they have their own position in the mind. And I can't see why, if Taiwan and China and other brands can move in here, why those strong brands in France cannot penetrate here.
How is 2011 turning out? I mean, not turning out. How it has turned out for the IT sector in India?
Well, I think reasonably good. Our results are coming out for the second quarter. There seems to be a robust growth in this. Clearly, there is a huge amount of uncertainty that exists, both coming in from US and Europe. The question is, when there is so much uncertainty and downturn, why is this industry still talking about a 16 to 18% growth? And if you peel down in a little bit, private sector globally is doing reasonably well, right? What they are investing in IT is very different from what they invested in the past. Right now, they are investing in IT for transformation. They are investing in IT to say how can they embrace the advantages of social media. How can they take the advantages of their new mobile platforms, where you can improve the productivity. They're looking at what applications can they move to cloud, and I think all this is what's driving ours. So typically, when people hear about so much economic uncertainty, they tend to cut their budgets. But because the work is happening in these spaces, it's not getting cut. Second point is that today, from India, whether it is Indian companies or global service providers, we run people's businesses today. Right? So it's no longer just project work. So the business still goes on, and hence we continue to run their businesses. Whether it is in the BPO space or IT tech space or application management. So we are not seeing it. I think in December we'll be clearer. We do hope that the initiatives that have been taken by France and Germany as leaders in the Eurozone would fructify. If they don't, and if all the measures being taken in the US don't happen, then I think we should not worry about the IT sector. We should worry a lot about many other things, right? And but we do hope that the various measures and the signs are that everybody is looking at they're being succeeding in what they're doing rather than the other way.
Okay. What's your forecast for 2012 globally and more focus on India?
The jury is not out yet. Right? If things go completely awry and every of the negative macroeconomic factors have a common confluence coming in together, then it's an unpredictable thing. So the uncertainty is a kind that predicting at this stage is rather difficult.
Okay.
The demand, if I'm looking from mid to long term, right, we think it's going to be very robust. Okay. Right? It's the short term gyrations that are worrying us. Will the banks default? Will governments in their anxiety to cut back costs, cut down on projects, and does that start a spiral? But believe me, the biggest worry that we have right now is that while a lot of work is being done by G20 and so on, the overall sentiments are getting weaker. And are we going to talk ourselves into a recession even if there wasn't one? Right? And I think that's an important one, right? And we believe that this phase will pass, right? People will get together and solve the issues of Greece and followed by Italy and Spain, right? I think responsible politics is required. We need all aysayers and naysayers to be together because otherwise, we'll be playing a very irresponsible game and pushing the world into a recession.
Okay. Looking at what's happening in India, in the domestic market, do you think that the Indian giants have been slow to grab a piece of cake here? Because we hear IBMs and others, bagging really big deals and from under their nose. How do you see that?
So, it's a good question. If you look at it, our industry has been rather focused on services, and that services were globally oriented. There were companies such as TCS and Wipro and HCL who have always been, in fact, their entry into the global services arena started with, and I think they're making fairly good headway into the Indian market. uh, with both their own products as well as with representing others as system integrators. Uh, Companies like IBM and HP entered the market for the Indian market,
Yeah.
right, and then have leveraged the talent,
Mhm.
right? So everybody has taken a very different strategy. I think that nothing is lost. The time is right now. Uh, Connectivity is increasing. 3G is coming in. We have now new platforms that are there for mobile and internet applications. And I think a new collaborative model is going to emerge where small and big both are going to play their role. I think the innovative companies, small innovative companies are going to come out with products and solutions which are going to be on these new platforms. I just read about how many applications on the Apple App Store are from India. And the good point is nobody need to know where they are, and only the application needs to be the brand rather than who made it.
Yeah.
Right. So that's a very good model for small companies.
Okay.
And I think that's going on. The areas of concern that I would have, I think there are very large opportunities in the government. Uh, uh, Very large outlays have been put, very little has been spent till now. So that's the opportunity.
Yeah.
Right? So you can still come and play, it's not late. The issue is that we need to quickly get over our issues at the point of government. We have many acts, bills that are to be passed by the parliament. Decision making in the government is at this point a little slow.
Yeah.
And we need to get over that so that the markets that we said get opened up. The fact that 250,000 villages will get connected on broadband, universities are already getting connected. There is a bill that is getting into the parliament which is going to make it mandatory for all citizen services to be delivered electronically.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So everybody's solutions will find their place here, right? And we do hope that French participate in this as much.
Yeah.
I don't think companies internationally need to worry about IP and stuff like that. I think we have a very strong intellectual property area. And I think particularly in a B2B situation,
Yeah.
it's robust, right? We are working, we have improved a lot in the consumer space as well.
Yeah.
But into B2B, I don't think IP is an issue. And at least in India, we can say that it may not be the same story in all countries.
This is your third visit to France in the last, I think, 3 or 4 years. Do you see changes there?
I think the changes in attitude, the changes on wanting to collaborate, which is different from what it used to be, right? In the first year when we went, we were wondering who are we selling to and what, right? And I think when we go now, in fact, this particular conference that we're going was at the French initiative, right? And I think we really welcome it. It's about what we can do together. It's no longer about who buys what from whom and who sells what. It's more about cooperation, co-creation, working together. I think that's a big change, right? And I think there is also a better understanding, in some places like France, there could be French think differently, French are different, but now France is also far more integrated into the world economy. I think the relationship between our two countries are also improving and on a different high. So I think that opens up. President Sarkozy's visit was welcome, and I think that helped as well. So I think on all fronts, I would say we are up, but is it fast enough? The change, I would say we can do more, and both of us have to gain in that. I think from the Indian side, we are seeing companies getting bolder. We had a lot of people had earlier written off the French market, no longer, right? And they are present there, they're investing there, and we do hope this change continues in that same vector.
Okay. So, what would be the essence of your message to the French this time?
Well, it's the message remains the same. I think the message is India offers partnership we have really two strong value propositions for France. I think Indian market, not only in IT and surely in IT space, but in many others, is there for you to take, right? Though you cannot bring in the same models that you did before. So sharing our experiences of how people may have changed and access the Indian market. And the other one is how we can be, leveraging the highly skilled workforce that we have, right, to your advantage, and how other countries and other corporations have done it to their benefit. Um, I just met a company this morning in the telecom space, and they have gone into services, and they have grown from 1,000 people in January of 2010 to 7,000 people in September, right? And that just shows, and this is not about replacing jobs, taking away jobs, but using this model to access global markets. And I think that's the message. I think the message for us this time is also to say it's beyond cost, right? Cost is given, so cheaper, better, faster is given. It's about what more can we do for you beyond this, right? And that means a new different partnership will happen.
So do you see cloud as a threat or as a challenge for the Indian companies?
We have history, right? Every time anything disruptive has come, we've used it. The whole tech sector has used it to its advantage. We had the same questions when we were moving from mainframes to client server. It was the same question when we had ERP coming in saying, will bespoke development happen? When open source came, it was the same question. So I think there have been many disruptive. What does a new technology do? There is one ingredient in that, fundamentals in the new technology. It provides new, easy access and always reduces cost.
Yeah.
Right? So if those are the two ingredients, people actually tend to use more technology than they did before. So we would expect corporations, for example, right? They would probably be moving lock stock. They'll be picking up specific areas that they can leverage.
Yeah.
And I think they will start using application that they never did before, right? Just to give an example, analytics, right? Some do, some don't. But if I could offer some of that on a cloud, then you can use tools of mine to get a report out, and that would work. But I think the biggest opportunity that we have are in two spaces. One is government. Governments across the world are under-penetrated. And if we can take the complexity out of managing things for the government, then they will be actually doing more. So we think there is an opportunity for us to use cloud and cloud application in the government. Let's not worry about whether it was a private cloud or a public cloud, because governments are large enough to own the cloud themselves.
Yeah.
The second one is there is a very large segment. Let's take Germany, let's take India. 80% of our workforce is in the small sector. The small sector sells to the large sector. They have to be integrated, right? But are they leveraging technology fully? Can they manage the complexity? Can they set up centers back in India or anywhere else? No, but they can actually use the cloud. So we think that cloud will actually increase the total pie, right? Now, there is a threat for sure, right? And the threat is, are the players going to change, right? Are new players going to come? And that's the beauty of technology, right? Almost new players start coming in. So who could have imagined Amazon coming in as a player? We have found many of our member companies are offering services on the cloud already, right? And they were not a player. We are finding big opportunities in the cloud for our small companies because the applications that they put there are faceless, right? Customer doesn't care who made it as long as there was a robust service to be given. So I think cloud offers an overall increase in the market, but a possible disruption in the structure of the industry. And I think that's a good thing because it kind of shakes up what you do today. We've seen the large companies here. They're not going to be sitting back, let somebody else disrupt their market. So they're working hard to think what can they do. So everyone has a cloud strategy right now. I would just say that from the work that we have done, cloud is more than a hype, right? And we think it will deliver on its promise. It is not owned by anyone, right? It is basically a technology that was in the wings for a long time, but now the provisioning is happening. At the same time, I think it will be wrong on our part to presume that the swing will be so fast that everything that we were doing today will get disrupted. Business models will change, people will work their own stuff out.
Looking at one more possible threat for the Indian sector is, we referred to that earlier, the IBMs and HPs. As more and more global giants, come and leverage the Indian talent pool, how well can the Indian companies respond to that?
Yeah, so there are global service providers, and I think today you would include among the global service provider not only IBM and Accenture. You'll put TCS, Wipro, Infosys in the same, because if you look at their model with $7-8 billion of pure services, no hardware element, no infrastructure in it, it's a pretty sizable number. Right, so I think they are in the same game. Then the second question is, where is the scope for the mid-size companies, right? And I think a general purpose mid-size has no place, right? So every one of them is getting into niches.
Okay.
We have, as I mentioned, we have the Fortune 500, and then we have the next people. A lot of people come in saying, hey, who's going to give me attention? So the value proposition that the smaller companies, mid-sized companies are giving, saying, we operate in your space, we bring in domain knowledge, and you get our attention, you're very valuable for us. So I think that there's this new positioning that's happening, where I think there is enough for everyone. We had made a forecast, I'm talking from the Indian context, that by 2020, our revenues, both domestic and exports in the services, would be about $225 billion. Which is 3 times of what it was this year.
Yeah.
So, in that, and I hope I don't sound arrogant in saying this is not going to be constrained by demand. This is going to be constrained by our ability to deliver, our ability to carve out that, ability to approach newer markets, newer geographies, newer verticals, newer customer bases. And that is what NASSCOM's focus is right now, on helping our industry get there. Right, because then it helps us and the rest of the world. So our focus is on not to worry about whether there's going to be demand, whether there's going to be one technology or the other, that the technology will take care, is how do we access new markets. Today 80% of our business comes from 2 countries, 75% of our business comes from 3 verticals, right? A large part of our business comes as repeat from the Fortune 500 kind of companies, but there is world and market beyond this.
Okay. And finally, since you're going barely 3 months before the summit of NASSCOM, what would you like to tell the French companies, to basically to incite them, to excite them to come and participate in that?
Well, I think one is, first is to change their own aspirations. I think there is business to do in countries like India and money to make. And there is, across IT, BPO and engineering services to leverage this talent pool, right? And ensure that you are able to approach other markets leveraging this technology, this pool that we have. I think sometimes you get very conservative because of all that you see in the media and hear. I think it's important they be here. We welcome them to come in our February conference to feel what's happening. I just gave you an example of how a telecom company has grown 7 times in 18 months, and the story is not stopped for them, right? So for those who would take no risk, there is no gain, right? So we'd say, please come and make most of this market.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
It was really very nice.